The cursed painting. In the quiet town of Ijibuode, there stood an old, forgotten museum, dusty, silent, and avoided by all but the most curious visitors. Hidden within its dimly lit corridors was a painting known as "The Woman Who Watches." Nobody knew who had painted it, but the legend surrounding it was chilling. It was said that if you stared at the woman in the painting for too long, you would see her move. Some swore they had seen her blink. Others claimed she whispered their names. But one thing was certain: all who gazed at her for too long met an untimely death within 7 days. Most dismissed the tale as an old wives' story. But not Tunde. Tunde was a final-year art student at the university, fascinated by myths and mysteries. When he heard about the cursed painting, he scoffed, "A painting that kills? That's ridiculous," he laughed as he told his friends. "It's just another old superstition," but the more he thought about it, the more intrigued he became. He decided to see it for himself. One Friday evening, just before the museum closed, Tunde sneaked in with his camera. The hall smelled of old paper and dust, and the air was thick with silence. He followed the dim corridor until he found her. The painting was large, nearly as tall as he was. It depicted a woman in a red dress, seated in a darkened room. Her black eyes seemed almost too lifelike, staring directly at whoever looked at her. Her hands rested on her lap, long fingers folded together delicately. The background was shadowy, making it hard to tell where she was sitting. Tunde chuckled, shaking his head. "So, this is the famous cursed painting." He lifted his camera to take a picture. Just as he clicked the shutter, a gust of wind whooshed through the room, though there were no open windows. The painting's frame rattled slightly on the wall. Tunde's smirk faded. Then, he heard it, a whisper, "Tunde." His breath caught. He spun around. There was no one else in the room. His flashlight flickered for a moment, and when it stabilized, his eyes darted back to the painting. The woman's head had tilted, just slightly. A cold shiver ran down his spine. His hands turned clammy. He took a step back, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. "No, that's impossible." Convinced his mind was playing tricks on him, he forced a laugh, grabbed his camera, and left the museum in a hurry. That night, Tunde struggled to sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw the woman's face, her head tilted in that unnatural way. At 2 a.m., he heard a soft creak. He sat up. His room was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. He glanced at his desk, where his camera lay. The screen was on. Frowning, he got up and picked it up. The last picture he had taken, the one of the painting, was open, but something was wrong. The woman's face had changed. Her lips, once neutral, were now curved into a slight smile. Tunde's blood ran cold. His hands trembled as he turned off the camera and tossed it across the room. "This is just my imagination," he muttered to himself, trying to steady his breathing. Then, from the corner of his room, he heard it again. "Tunde." The voice was soft, almost loving. But it came from the shadows. He didn't sleep that night. Day after day, over the next few days, strange things kept happening. His reflection in the mirror would sometimes seem a second too slow to move. His phone screen would randomly flicker and show static. He would wake up to find his bedroom door slightly open, though he always locked it. By the 5th day, he was a wreck, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. He stopped going to class. He stopped picking up his friends' calls. On the 7th day, his best friend, Deli, decided to check on him. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Nothing. Worried, Deli called the landlord, and they broke down the door. What they saw made their blood run cold. Tunde was sitting on the floor, back against the wall. His eyes were wide open, filled with terror. His lips were parted, as if he had tried to scream but never got the chance. And then there was the painting, a new one. Hanging on the wall above his desk was a fresh canvas, a painting of Tunde himself. His mouth was open in a frozen scream, his hands reaching forward as if trying to escape, and in the background, just barely visible in the shadows, the woman in red was smiling.